Good evening, friends and followers of Western Cape Teachers Forum. I trust that everybody is safe and warm as the mother city, experience some brutal cold and stormy weather over the last 2 days. And so allow me at this time to, express our thoughts and concerns with some of our friends and our colleagues at Mzamo High School and F.J. Conradi Primary School in the Hicksrivier Valley in the town of the Dorans, as they had suffered some structural damages that was caused by the storm. So our thoughts and our prayers go with the family, with the colleagues, with the school community of these affected schools, and we trust that you are safe and warm, as it were. Now, and also my thanks and my appreciation to every single teacher or teachers that contributed to the Feel Good Fridays campaign. We've had video submissions all the way from George and Hookville and Touwsrivier and even the City Belt. So thank you. That's all in our quest to uplift the mood and the spirit of our Western Cape Teachers Forum family, as we understand and we appreciate the deteriorating mental health of our colleagues. And so let us know where you're watching from tonight as we take the conversation to the principal of Golden Grove Primary School, Mrs. Dawn Petersen. Ms. Dawn, good evening to you.
Good evening, Lee. Just one correction before you go further, Lee. Ms. Dawn Petersen.
Ms. Dawn Petersen, my apologies. That is duly noted and so corrected. Now, how are you this evening, ma'am? I believe you've started your teaching career in Duneside Primary School in Mitchells Plain for a number of years. From there, you went on and you took up the position as principal of Bloemfontein Primary School in Hanover Park for about 11 and a half years. And for the last 2.5 years, I believe you are currently at Golden Grove Primary School. Just very briefly tell us a little bit more about Dawn Petersen as a teacher, as a person, before we get into the real issues that we're here for tonight.
Okay, so Dawn Petersen, the person, when you ask me or you say something like that to me, normally revolves around my two daughters that I have, Kim and Tatum. So I'm a mommy to the two beautiful girls. Obviously, we have our ups and downs. And then a passionate teacher for the past 32 years. You mentioned earlier on, I started my teaching career in Mitchells Plain at Duneside Primary. From there, I moved across to Bloemfontein Primary as the principal. And then I find myself now at Golden Grove Primary in Rondebosch. Always very passionate about teaching, always trying and always saying, wherever I find myself, that whatever we do, the center should be the child. And everything else should come second to what is important to the child.
Love that. Now, Dawn, I know for one that you've been awarded the coveted prize or is it Excellence in Primary School Leadership, the National Teaching Awards? I think it was in 2015, if I'm
2016.
2016. Just talk to us a little bit about that and how that has changed or affected and influenced your teaching career as a leader.
Look, for me, the huge part about winning that award is the fact that I actually won that award while I was the principal at Golden Grove Primary. The fact that the school community recognized and celebrated the award with me is what basically I kept within my heart. Going into a school like Bloemfontein Primary 11 years ago, where we were labeled as dysfunctional, we turned the school around to fully functional within that period of time, despite all the context, despite the gang violence, despite everything else. At Bloemfontein Primary, I always say to the staff, we need to create a home away from home. And the fact that the children loved coming to school. When it was school holidays, they complained about not being at school. That is what made the award so special to me. So it was provincial only. But, I've always said, and in follow-ups where I speak to teachers and I'm invited to mentor teachers who also then take part in this National Teaching Awards, I always say to them, this award doesn't define who you are. It is wonderful to be acknowledged that what you do in your space is what defines who you are as a teacher and the impact you have in the lives of the learners.
Yeah, and it's about creating excellence within your context, right?
That's right.
And I think that is the crucial thing that everybody sort of needs to understand. Irrespective of where you are, doesn't mean that you have all the technology and the resources within a classroom at your school. That doesn't mean excellence. What do you do over and above what you have to promote the idea of excellence. And so, again, well done on that excellent achievement. Now, Dawn, there's been divided opinion, around whether schools should reopen, and one of the words that people kept on throwing around was the issue of privilege, the issue of you get privileged schools versus the not so privileged schools. And I mentioned the examples earlier of the FJ Conradi and the Nomzamo High School that suffered structural damages, and that may have been as a result of poor maintenance. I do not know, but I mean, that could potentially be one of the reasons as to why the school suffered that. Now, in your experience, having the institutional knowledge of working in under-resourced schools, or on the Cape Flats, extensively in Mitchells Plain, Hanover Park, being the leader of the school for a number of years, having endured a number of challenges besides COVID-19, and where you are currently, we are in a little bit in a more fortunate position in terms of what you're able to do, and financially wise, and the resources and the space that you've got at your disposal. Would you say, in your view, just from experience, would you say that enough has been done to level the proverbial playing field?
Oh no, definitely not. And even when I set my feet in at Golden Grove Primary School, that was kind of one of almost the first things I said to the staff. But it's not just about the staff, it's about where you find yourself and the space. So, we're always speaking about transformation. And even when I applied for the post from Bloemfontein to go to Golden Grove, when I got the post, I asked myself, is this what I want to do? Is this where I want to go? And I've always said that in talking about transformation, you cannot transform from the outside in. And it's time that we take up our rightful places in schools like Golden Grove and schools on the other side, as people would say. But you see, you step into the privilege because it is there. It is part and parcel of the culture of that school. The way the school has been built, the actual physical infrastructure. I still up to today found that there was a room I wasn't aware of because the school is so big. So looking at the school at Bloemfontein Primary, the same amount of learners, moving to Golden Grove, the same amount of learners. But what we have at Golden Grove is double the building, if not triple. We have tennis courts, we have a swimming pool, we have soccer, rugby fields, etc. But then again, you have parents that pays for this privilege. And along with this privilege also comes its own unique challenges. Because you then would get so many other things that you do not have to deal with in schools like Bloemfontein, for example. So I definitely, truly, and honestly feel that so much more needs to be done. And with the COVID-19, what has come to fore, it is so obvious, and I feel heart sore. At times, even speaking to my staff, when we speak to each other in the staff room, we realize just how privileged we are. But I want to emphasize that with this privilege comes other challenges also. Okay. And the grass is not always greener on the other side. Right. And I always take my hat off. I've worked at Bloemfontein Primary School, I've worked in Mitchells Plain, and I always take my hat off to the hard work that teachers put in. And one of the things I used to say to the teachers at Bloemfontein Primary, I used to say to them, you are such an awesome staff that I'm sure if I take you out of the situation in an Park and I take you into one of the other schools in the leafy suburbs, you will perform above and beyond even what is currently happening at those schools. So yes, I think that with this COVID also now, our department really, I think this is the opportune time for them to look at policy changes to ensure that we try and level the playing fields, because currently we definitely have not done that.
Sure. Now, just quickly, I just want to pick up on something you mentioned in your response. You said we need to take up our rightful place in these schools. What are the we that you are referring to?
I'm talking about us as hardworking educators, wherever we find ourselves. Because like I mentioned to you earlier on, I said, even when I got the post at Golden Grove, I had to think about whether I would accept the post or not, whether I was almost worthy of accepting the post. And stepping in there, I realized that I had so much to give. So within the transformation agenda at the school, my influence I can use at the school to change the narrative. If I hadn't taken on the post at Golden Grove would have possibly been operating within the demographic they found themselves. So together with myself, the SGB, the teachers, we're all talking to changing the narrative. But the bottom line is where we're saying that this must be a space where any parent, if we can obviously accommodate it physically,
Yeah.
where any parent can feel free to apply to Golden Grove, because they would then, like they would, when I was at the Park, Blomvlei was also labeled as a very good school and parents wanted to bring their children there. Parents at Golden Grove that wants to apply. So wherever we find ourselves, we must give our all, we must give our best to each and every child that we encounter along the way. And that is where I'm coming from.
Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier about, let's look at the example of Nomzamo High School that's situated along the N2 in Strand. Now, the school has been blown to pieces. You know, there's almost no school left. And right across from Nomzamo High School, on the other side of the N2, you have Redham High School, which is a private institution. And so that is arguably one of the starkest visual examples of education inequality in South Africa. Do you think it would be an unfair request, given the fact that the department is uncompromising in having the grade 12s complete the curriculum for the current year? Do you think it would be an unfair request to ask some of the schools, that school, for example, to accommodate the grade 12s of Nomzamo High School so that they could continue with the learning?
Accommodate as in on the premises?
Classroom space.
Look, I'm saying that if it is possible to do things like that, it must be done. I'm reminded that even at Golden Grove, for example, we now have designed a venue hire policy, because for some years people were using the venue kind of as part of the privilege, and we're saying, no, to be fair to everybody, we must have a policy that dictates that we deal with everybody the same way. But then the CM one day wanted to use the school, and I said, we have a policy, sir, you need to see what the charges are. And he reminded me very clearly that Golden Grove does not belong to Golden Grove per se, it belongs to the Western Cape Education Department.
Yes.
So I'm saying in the same way, the resources that we have, if it can be shared practically, then why not? Why can we not take those matrics into a building where there is space to take them into the building, and then also give them this sense of resources that they're possibly not used to, and also the sense of possible expertise and extra human resources that can also, in this last stretch for them, give them that necessary assurance that they are also valued and important human beings. Why not?
All right. Now let's move along. Mandela Day is happening the 18th of July, this coming Saturday. And so this is certainly an opportunity to practice commitment to uplifting the dignity of others, you know, and to celebrate the life of the father of our nation. Any plans in this regard as a school?
Okay, as a school, that's actually a conversation that we have taken up. Okay. And we've realized that even at a school like Golden Grove, we do have families that are struggling because of this pandemic. There are families where parents have lost their jobs. There are families within our school community that actually is financially struggling. And we find that in the fact that many parents cannot continue paying their school fees, they're looking at payment plans, etc., which again puts another spin on the privilege, where we need to also be able to look out for our staff that we have at the school. So we have said that as a staff, we want to actually, it's something that I personally have taken up in a different space with my church, where we do food parcels. We're doing it now once per month. It started at the beginning of lockdown. We started with 34 families within the church parish. It's grown now to about 180 families. So we also source donations. So along the same lines, the staff has actually been speaking about how we can rally our community, our school community, to come on board and bring donations along if they can afford to, so that we can actually see to our almost immediate Golden Grove family that needs some support during this difficult time, and even take it further afield if we have to. So we have started this conversation. We just spoke about it today in a meeting.
Fantastic. Now let's backtrack slightly to the 1st of June, and you would remember that there was a lot of confusion around the reopening date. There was a date gazetted, and then there were announcements made by the DBE, and so many principals found themselves in a state of panic and confusion, and so some decided to stick to the initial date, and others, They took some decisive leadership. What was the situation like at Golden Grove at that time?
Look at Golden Grove with not being sure what to do. We actually also engaged with our SGB at the time, and we had sent out a letter to our parents. So within our letter, we had then said to parents that we would not be opening our school, and we stuck to that. Despite everything else that was coming our way, the fact that I needed to explain to the CEM, you need to give your reason, you need to give your plan, you need to give your backup. But we stuck to our guns because we took a decision as the collective, talking about SNT, HEB, and teachers, and our children then came back the following week. And since then, we've now adopted the bi-weekly model, and we have been welcoming our children back against the bi-weekly model.
Okay, so we're back at school now, and certainly things are not, we didn't return to things as it was before lockdown, so it's not back to normal, but it's back to school. So just very briefly, how are we coping with the demands of that COVID-19 has placed on our institutions and as a staff?
Do you have 10 hours for me to complain? If you want me to be completely honest, it is absolutely crazy.
Okay.
And I was saying to someone earlier on, actually, I think my sister also working at the school, I said, it is the worst possible time to be a principal because we are getting pressure from all quarters. We need to be able to be sensitive to our staff. We need to consider the fears and anxieties of our parents. Then, of course, we have our employer that changes. And I think somebody at head office has kind of figured out how to do a Google form. Survey form. So you get one Google form today, which changes tomorrow, and then if it's not done by 9 o'clock, you get a red message via an email to say that this is one of the schools and your name is part of a list that hasn't submitted. Then you need to submit a plan of action. Then you need to every day it takes about 2 to 3 hours to submit what the department requires. So you have that pressure from the department. You need to answer to them. You need to ensure that you do not break down relationships between yourself as SMT and SGB, between yourself as and your staff. You need to constantly be sensitive to everybody, and then to top it all the protocols that you apparently know, that you've not been trained on the protocols. But when something happens, you should be able to know how to quote a protocol. How do you quote a protocol? What happens when a learner tests positive? You should know as a principal exactly what to do. You should then also, when a teacher comes in and you ask the questions and the teacher presents with 2 symptoms, then you all of a sudden become a doctor also to decide in this peak time and in winter, whether this is actually now COVID-like symptoms, or is it just the normal flu, or is it sinus? So you now all of a sudden become a doctor. So all the roles that have been placed on principals, I think has been absolutely ridiculous. The fact that we are expected to know everything. Okay. And I said, I just, last year, there's a time during the year that you always say, what, I wish this year comes to an end. This year has been so busy. I actually said, I just wish 2020 hadn't started. Because what has come along our path this year, nobody could have anticipated. But the pressure is enormous. Yeah. And I think, and today when I had a meeting with the staff, I said, you must realize that as principals, we are also human. And we sometimes do not know, given this global pandemic that we're dealing with, that we're all going through, and that sometimes that is forgotten. So I must say to you, honestly, it's an absolutely crazy time. And sometimes unfairly, the pressure is put on principals to know exactly what to do, to be able to answer to the department, to be able to answer and be okay and see to the well-being of staff. All those things. What is the correct way we need to adapt our curriculum? How are we going to do it at our school? Just so many things that needs to be answered all the time, that is constantly placed on our desks. From the morning I step in at school from 6:30 till I leave sometimes at 4:30. It is non-stop and constant.
Sure.
So it's really crazy.
Now, in terms of these, Anna, there's a lot of guidelines, letter A to, I think is it L or N? I'm not even sure.
But, and I think To Z and another part of the another alphabet letter we can
All
make
right.
up.
Yeah.
There's so many.
So like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of these things that you may not understand how to implement it, or the practical implications of these guidelines may sometimes be challenging. So do you experience or that? Are you receiving adequate support and guidance from the employer in this respect?
Look, the support and guidance is obviously in paper form,
Okay.
but the reality of actually dealing with it is a completely different thing.
Okay.
For example, how do you maintain the safe space? How do you ensure that you are adhering to the protocols? So if you look, for example, if you just look at the maintenance team that you have, so luckily I can say I have a maintenance team. But within the maintenance team, there's two of them that have applied for comorbidities. It has been successful. So now I'm operating without the two of them. Then you look at the fact that it's expected that door handles, for example, is cleaned every hour or sanitized every hour. Your human resource is spread thin.
Yeah.
Then you need to ensure that classrooms, once children have used it, needs to be cleaned and sanitized as well. So the reality of what you're dealing with is completely different to the way it's set out on paper. And in that sense, I don't feel, because like I'm saying, we received these protocols, we were not trained. I think in one of was it the minister that said that the principals received training or teachers received training with these protocols? That is so not true, because it never, no training was, we came into a situation, we got this paperwork, we needed to interpret the paperwork and deal with it. Yeah. So I'm being very honest in saying I don't feel that we have received the necessary support. We talk about psychosocial support. You've given a number that you can call. I don't think everybody wants to call that number, but you know, you need to stay strong for your colleagues. And the support that you get to be able to stay strong, you have to take it into yourself to do that. So once again, I'm saying, honestly, I don't feel that we've received the necessary support. But then again, if you go to the higher level, looking at CNs, for example, that they have also possibly not received the support. This is new to all of us. So it's just a case of how do we try and deal with this the best way we can. So in that also you have a CN that needs to deal with how many principals, how many schools, that is also trying his or her best to try and support. So I don't want to be too harsh on them, but I'm just saying it is, and then you have the curriculum advisors that doesn't come into the schools because they do the Zoom meetings. Then you have the WCD staff at head office that works from half the staff that works from home and the other half that goes into a sanitized building, etc. That we are expected to come into a building, ensure every day that this building meets the high standards of hygiene for our children to come in, that we need to ensure protocols and like distancing for learners. It is so difficult because every child you almost see, you have to remind them all the time. They are children after all. So I think that the support, in saying that I've not received the support, I can also understand that the powers that be is trying their best, but on the ground where we're dealing with it at school level, it is really, really difficult. Yeah. Because what we are expected to do is comply. We are expected to report. We are expected to do surveys every day, and that is hectic also. You know, that puts another type of pressure on us as principals to be able to deliver that.
Yeah. Now, just a yes or no. You know, there's, and I'm not, without mentioning any names of labor formations, but at least two that I read earlier on today. What's the day? The 14th of July. Have called for schools to shut down in the wake of the latest developments in terms of the health professionals, the way the virus is now behaving. Now, yes or no, do you feel that it is safe for the schools to remain open at this stage?
You just want a yes or no?
Yes or no? So
for the majority, no.
Okay. All right. There's a yes as well. I'm tempted to ask you to expand on the yes. I don't know if you want to quickly venture into that one just for a minute.
Look, I'm saying let's leave it at the yes or no. Maybe we can come back to that one. All right. Let's come back to that.
No, fantastic. Now, Dawn, let's move on. According to your website, and I want to read it, Golden Grove Primary is committed to creating a dynamic and supportive learning environment in which learners can become caring, compassionate, considerate individuals who are responsible towards each other and society. Now, how has this pandemic influenced your vision as a school, even post COVID-19? How has it influenced the position of vision of Golden Grove Primary?
Look, I don't think it's pre, during, post COVID that we actually changed that vision. We try and install and make children feel that they are special, each and every child, and that we try and nurture the child to deliver or give of their best. And when we see we need to support the child, we support the child where necessary with what we have to give. But the interaction between teachers and learners is also the respect both ways is what we inculcate in our learners. So I think when you visit our school, you will find our children look up, like greet an adult that passes you, all those things that our parents taught us in our day that sometimes is lost in society today. We just say to our children constantly that, you know, you are special. We see you for who you are. If you need the support from us as the adults at the school, we give it to you in whichever way we can. But we try and encourage them to always reach basically for the stars and be the best person or learners that they can be.
All right. Now, the WCD's vision is quality education for every child in every classroom in every school in the province. And the mantra is enter to learn and leave to serve. And now we know it how. Now, do you feel that given the current conditions, are we able to give effect to that vision?
No. I mean, how is it realistically possible to give effect to that vision? Remember, and I always say when these visions come, I'm sure it is well thought out, well researched, but sometimes I do feel that within the visions that's being brought down from head office for that matter, that it needs to come from the bottom up, where you actually get it from the ground and you get the input from teachers on the ground as to what we feel is important. So coming and saying, it really just sounds absolutely awesome. Saying the bottom line is we want to get to each and every child, wherever these children find themselves. But within creating the best environment for children, let's look at places like Khayelitsha, that where there are some schools still operated that was built on the apartheid model, where you have over 1,000+ learners in a school building that has one quad. You will have plus minus 1,500 children in that one school building. And then you come to a school like Golden Grove. I'm not even going to speak about schools further beyond Golden Grove that has campuses that we're talking about. So how are we now giving each and every child that equal infrastructure, that equal amount of human resources that schools on the other side can give? So I do feel that we have a very, very far way to go. And I do feel that the time is right, again, to re-look educational policy. But you know what? Re-look it with the role players. Don't have it where it comes down to teachers. Have teachers as part of the conversation, have learners as part of the conversation. Have people that is relevant on the ground where we are working with the children to give their inputs. Many of us have our thoughts and feelings about unions at this stage. Unions are supposed to be there to see to labor peace in the workplace. Have those relevant parties all in the room to discuss and re-look policy and say, how are we going to start bridging this divide that is now so glaringly obvious within our educational field at the moment. It is obvious. And I think that now is the time. Yeah. I hope that ministers and people can come to and have the conversation, which is so desperately needed to level the playing fields.
Yeah, I mean, if I may add my 1 cent, I for one, I want to align myself with that vision, quality education for every child in every classroom in every school. I can align myself. It's a believable thing. But I'm looking, for example, about what you mentioned earlier, the psychosocial support. Now, if I'm compromised here and here, let's look at the external factors, the fear, the gang-infested areas where you need to teach in the children that are experiencing trauma at home, having to come into school to receive learning. Those are all issues that compromises the whole quality learning experience. And so that in itself is a barrier to this vision, And so yeah, I just felt I needed to know to mention that.
And if I can just add on to that, Lee, look, when I was at Bloemfontein, a stark reality of what the children deal with almost on a daily basis. That we were talking about gang violence. So we were writing a systemic test. I know it was the day of the systemic test, and this one learner of mine, she was walking and a guy was shot. He was killed in front of her. She had to walk around his body. And when she came to school, she sat down to write a systemic test. Afterwards, she told the teacher what had happened. But then again, the results, when it is analyzed, those factors are not considered within the context that the child wrote the exam. You get matriculants at the schools in an Park that has to write the same exam as matriculants at Rondebosch Boys, for example. And you look at those two just physical spaces that the children are in and that they have to operate in, but they have to give the same output. How is this right?
Yeah.
You understand? So that is where I'm coming from in saying this. We really need to look at it. And I always say, we don't want to say that the schools in areas like Park, I'm talking to my experience now, must not deliver quality teaching and learning. As when I was principal there, the teachers will attest that I insisted on that. That when you are giving, you need to teach this child as if it's your own personal, it is your child in your class. Because you're going to give the best to that child. And that is what I think we all need to strive for within education, that each and every single child should almost have equal. We know it's not going to happen overnight, but we need to start the dialogue. We need to start the shift in policy so that we can speak to that and get to each and every child being equal.
I can speak about my experience myself as a student. How many times I've been around. I took 3 taxis or modes of transport to get to car to house in the morning. And I mean, anyways, it's not about me, but I can relate to what you've just described. And that is the reality of so many other learners that are currently in the system and expect and that are tested against the same criteria. And so that is unfortunate. Now, don't we're reaching a close here. I want to read a Facebook entry, and I'm hoping that you're not going to mind, because my next question was why did you become a teacher? But hold that thought. Raisa Ali said the following: Hi, I just saw a post on Western Cape Teachers Forum about you and was immensely proud. You were my teacher in Standard 1 at Duneside Primary School in 1994. I remember how kind-hearted you are. How a simple act of discovering that I had eyesight problems endeared me to you because you actually noticed. It is that quality in a teacher that I believe stands out and makes all the difference. I went on to get a qualification in medical laboratory science, but as fate would have it, ended up in the classroom as a high school teacher a few years ago. I just wanted to say hello and thank you. Now, how do one respond to that?
Oh, I'm smiling from ear to ear. It's absolutely awesome. And, you don't realize in just that one kind word how you can actually affect or make a difference in a child's life. So I always come back to, and us, the staff at Golden Grove will possibly say, Miss, you mentioned Bloemfontein too much, but Bloemfontein was part of who I am. And dealing with the children there was part of who I am. And I always used to say that we created a home away from home for those children within that context. And just to relay, the one day I had a little boy in my office. Oh, he was Diamaka. Oh my word. He was really. And he came in and I said to him, come on, just give me a hug. And he looked at me and he didn't, that he didn't know what a hug was. I said to him, and please, it's not don't attach anything negative to it. I said to him, you know what? Give me your arms and I'm going to show you what it means. This is just me showing you that I care for you. Because this little boy that was in grade 1 had never been given a hug in his life.
Sure.
Something that, this is the real for some children. And when children come to the school within that few hours that you are with that child, you can show them something that they've never, ever even experienced. And even just touching them, stroking their hand and saying that they're awesome, that can make that difference for their child, choosing in a difficult context to go down the wrong path or to go down the right path. Because yet again, I can relate to in an old park having lost ex-learners, 4 of them, to gang violence because they chose the wrong path. And then again, on the other hand, I had awesome learners in and out of that made the right choice and has made the success of their life that I'm so proud of. And that is the difference we make, and that is what we must strive for all the time as teachers. So any teacher out there that is in a class with a child, no matter where you find yourself, you do the best for that child. So whether you're saying that you are in a privileged school or not, you know, even in the privileged school, you still could reach a child that we don't know what is actually going on in the child's home. And your interaction as a teacher can save a child from something horrible happening in a home. That on the outside, if you look at the child's home from the outside in, it looks like a perfect home, perfect family, but we don't know what is going on behind closed doors. So we must just be that person for the child to be able to go to at any given time.
Wow. And even with ourselves, I like what you said. So we must also check in with one another as adults, as colleagues. Because my next question to you was going to be, how do you motivate yourself firstly, and how do you keep your staff motivated? Because we must lead from the front here, as difficult as this may be. You know, I for one feel it's important that we check in with one another. You know, even if it's just that occasional WhatsApp or pop in, are you okay? What's happening? You know, keeping the finger on the pulse, because we suffer in silence many occasions, and that is not healthy. And so, just very quickly, how do you keep your staff motivated?
How do I keep myself motivated? I actually speak to myself at times, not because I'm crazy, that I have to tell myself at times you need to snap out of it now, because there are days that are difficult. That you're saying, is it worth it? Do I need to take my bag and leave? You have those days. But then again, I have an awesome support. I started earlier with speaking about my two daughters, an awesome support. Even my ex-husband, he supports. I can give him a call when I need to just chat to an adult. I had friends that I made when I was at Duneside. We are still friends 20 odd years later. And that is what keeps me going. So when I'm really down, I have a network. There's people that I can call. So on any given day, I can pick up the phone and just vent with somebody. So you need to have people that you can bounce things off. Don't keep it to yourself, but in your workspace, try and create a space where you are there for your colleague. That you are not overly critical of a colleague. That you don't go into a space that you're almost in competition with colleagues. Be there for each other. Share resources. Share lesson plans. Work and make life easier. So if you are 4 grade 3 teachers, why not split that and each of you do a subject? You share your planning with each other so that you don't have to sit down and plan for 4 subjects. Now you have 1 subject to plan for and you share it with your colleagues. That takes a load off you as well. So it's small things like that. And then also make time for yourself. Take a few hours out, and that is easier said than done. As much as I'm telling you to do this, I am guilty of not doing it, because you always want to please everybody all the time, but sometimes you need to become selfish for your own well-being and for your own sake.
Final thoughts in terms of how would you encourage our parents and our learners at this time, who may be sitting at home concerned, still anxious, even though they're sending their children to school, even though the kids are at school? What do you say to us as parents and learners?
Look, I need to say to parents that if you're choosing to send, if you're at the point where you're not sure, I need parents to trust that the teachers at school are professional and they're at school in the interest of your child. So trust that we are doing the best we can to ensure that safe place for your child to come into, because we will not be irresponsible. But I do understand parents' anxiety, and I get it. I always say I've said to a friend along the way, I said, I'm so glad my 2 girls are not at school anymore. I don't have to make that decision. And there are obviously parents, you have to make the decision, but you also need to trust that the school that you have chosen to have your child at will do everything within their power to ensure your child's safety, your child's well-being. So that is what I want to leave with parents and say, trust us. We really are there for you and your children. We are trying to do our best as well, because this is new to us. We have to look at teaching differently. From the beginning of the year to now, teachers have now needed to be able to do Zoom lessons. Teachers needed to become IT specialists, all within this period of a few months. But we are doing it to be able to deliver quality teaching and learning for our learners. So yes, trust us, learners, we are there for you. We really also, if you do feel anxious at any moment, have a chat to the teachers, speak to them about your anxiety, so that the teachers can see how they can assist you.
Yo, Mrs. Petersen, our time is
Miss, you're starting
Miss
again?
Petersen. Miss Petersen, there were many other issues that I would have loved to touch on, because I can see that the passion that you exude is amazing. And it takes courage to come onto a public platform such as this and just express your thoughts freely. And so for that, I want to commend you, and I want to thank you that you were willing to come on board and chat to us this evening. I'm sincerely honored to have done that tonight, and I'm trusting that the thousands of people that are watching this and that is about to still watch this um, will take something out of this. We all have thoughts, opinions, ideas, even. But many a times those things do not even get to hear or see the light. Dr. Miles Monroe, late Dr. Miles Monroe, he said something to the effect of the graveyard is the richest place on earth, because in the graveyard there are so many unwritten poems, unwritten songs, and thoughts and ideas that never materialized. And so, thank you for your courage. Thank you for expressing your heart so freely. Just by judging by the number of comments, and I'm really not going to go into any one of them because it's going to be unfair. You can probably pick it up afterwards, but thank you everybody. I can see that they've enjoyed it. They've downloaded some stuff here tonight that we are able to take forward. So thank you very much, and I wish you nothing but success upon success as you transform from within, as you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
And so God be with you, and everything of the very best.
Thank you for the invitation, Lee. I'm humbled by the invitation. And thank you for being such an awesome host, and also for what you are doing. But I want to also take this opportunity to say to all teachers out there, I take my hats off to you. You guys are awesome. You really are superheroes. Doing what we are doing despite these challenges, but yet coming to the fore and just giving of your best. Thank you so much from me to you. This is just my little way of saying thank you to everybody out there, every teacher, for what you are doing. And thank you, Lee. You're also a teacher. So thank you also. And thank you for what you're doing on this Western Cape Education Forum. You're awesome. You are brave.
No. I can't take all the credit. I work with a small team. So I'm
so to you and your team.
Yeah. Thank you very much. God bless and good night.
And the last thing before, because remember I need to go to school tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you to the Golden Grove school community. Thank you to the teachers. Thank you to the maintenance. Thank you to the support staff. Just thank you to everybody for doing what they're doing, because they really also just giving it their all for our children. They are super awesome. So I want to send that shout out to them, or else I'm not going to get coffee tomorrow from Sophie.
Somebody has said, and I'm only going to single out that comment. I said I was going to single out anybody.
Okay.
Crystal, no, I'm not going to, sorry, forget about it. Okay. Somebody mentioned, isn't there a job at Golden Grove Primary School? so I don't know. So they're seeing something. They're excited by what you presented. Okay. Mrs. Petersen, my words are kaput. So,
thank you, Lee.
Good night.
Have a good night further. Thanks. Bye-bye.